I think that's a very good uh, point, because I think looking at the group of the 58 that I mentioned in my
Yeah.
basic training company, the guys that made it through, you could kind of get a sense early on. Like I remember Matt Docchio, he was one of them specifically. He was like a Division One football player,
Sure.
brilliant dude, just great to be around, funny as hell. Was not afraid of the drill sergeants, which made it even more funny. But like you could tell certain guys that had a specific quality, and you could
Uh-huh.
kind of track them along. And but the I think the thing with all of them, it was they didn't join because they wanted to have a pretty colored hat, a fancy hat that other people would notice.
Yeah.
There was something deeper at the core that would not just wither away when, the mile whatever march you're on starts to dwindle away, and you don't know when you're stopping because you weren't told when to stop. So
Mm-hmm.
like that's the sort of thing that, like, looking back at the ones that were successful had that core driving factor that kept them going.
Yeah.
And as I say that, like I guess I didn't really clarify what that was for me, other than just that fear of failing, going back and saying, yeah, I didn't make it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
So, um, so with that, your motivation, yeah, to not, that was your motivation. Like, I don't want to fail this. Um, because you had a natural sense of discipline as young guy, determination. Was there anything or any moment that you realized you couldn't just out discipline this? It took, like, you had to
actually,
dig.
I think it would be more accurate to say that I have a discipline in like MacGyver type stuff.
Okay.
So, and that actually saved me more times than not.
Uh huh.
It's this sort of like creative on the fly. I call it chaos engineering, and I called it
Mm-hmm.
that even before I figured out what anything about Warhammer, which I'm deep down that rabbit hole now. But chaos engineering is like a thing, and it's basically
Yeah.
it's you, if you will it to happen, you'll find a way to make it happen, and that
Mm-hmm.
was uh, so. Like an example, there was to show how undisciplined I was. One of the During the preparation course, we had a land navigation phase where we get taken out in trucks and dropped off, and everyone gets your map, your compass, your protractor, and you get your initial point and go. And everyone just goes off into the woods by themselves with 50, 60 pounds and a rubber duck rifle, a fake rifle in their hand in case they lose it. It's not.
Okay.
um, so I get my point, I sit down, I don't have my pencil. Awesome. I am screwed, because at this point it's cadres are like, don't talk to anybody. And if you go asking the cadre for a pencil, you might as well just
You're
say,
gone.
I'm done. So I'm like, well, I'm screwed. But then
Good.
I'm
You
like,
showed
wait,
up unprepared.
I go grab a pine twig or a pine stick, about yay long, shave it down, get a lighter, light it up. I got myself a pencil. And I still have that somewhere in my safe. I saved it. So,
Uh
like, it's, basically coming up with creative solutions to the problems that I create
huh.
rapidly. And sometimes it's even better than what I started off with.
Heck yes. Okay. So
So,
this, I'm very excited. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chase.
so Blake, you solve your own problems that you create. Is that like a
I,
superhero
it's like
power that you
I
have? I
cause
have
I
ability
cause
to MacGyver my way out of the problems I create for myself.
I've caused so many of my own problems that I've had to get myself out of, that I've gotten really good at solving problems for myself and others.
I kind of love that. And how else would you know how to be such a good problem solver without like a ton of practice? So
Yep.
that's what brings me. So that all just like really excited me. First of all, that's kind of what special forces is, right? Like
Yeah.
you're doing the assignments that are unique and different and secretive and
Yeah.
costly and dangerous and all the things. And
A
one
very dynamic tool for a very dynamic problem set.
Okay, so because we're all the same age, I actually did not remember that I even did this until my boyfriend, when we first got together, I went through this box of memorabilia from my childhood and pulled out my Precious Moments Bible and my cross country medals, etc. But one thing that came out was this certificate for a team. And again, remember, I only had like 250 people in my whole high school. I was actually on a team called Future Problem Solvers of America. Did you guys remember that?
Mm-mm.
Do you ever? No one's ever heard of this. I didn't remember doing this, but it was actually my cross country coach who was an amazing teacher, mentor, positive guy. And if think about cross country anyway, Chase, your wife
Yeah.
is like
I
super
ran cross
runner.
country in middle school. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I
So see, that tells me even more about you. It's like
learned a lot from that one. Yeah.
right? Talk about like learning mental coping skills at a very freaking young age.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that same coach was the one that did the Future Problem Solvers of America. And so in a certain way, it's kind of like being a mathlete, like on this
Yeah.
mathlete club,
Yeah.
like super dork. But anyways, I learned so much and it's almost like, so I went on to get my master's later in life, but it reminds me like it forces you to think a certain way.
Yeah.
Like, so what you were just talking about with problem solving and MacGyver, either it was natural to you or it forced you to think a certain way. Not everyone has that.
Yeah.
Literally, like to have the skill of problem solving. It doesn't matter if you created them; it's still a skill to create.
Sometimes it does, but yeah, no,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and so
I was
uh,
just gonna say like the I lost it. Sorry, you go ahead.
oh,
Some
that is okay. So one thing I wanted to do is I don't I feel like a common theme in the people in the group that you guys want to help more, trauma is a common theme. So instead of like sharing everyone's, like no one really needs to, it's certainly not to minimize or take away because it was intense and real and you guys live with symptoms every day. But instead of going through like what your specific trauma was, can you almost like skip over it and tell me like, okay, so from special forces and transitioning back into like
real world.
civilian, yeah, real world civilian life, um because specifically being a green beret, special forces, like I'm guessing you couldn't even say the word weakness or I need help or any of those words. And
Yep.
so transitioning then to the real world, what what was that transition that led you to like, okay, I I don't know how to say this. I need help. And is that, am I asking that okay?
No, yeah, no, you're. I think the step by step explanation would take a long time, and
Sure. Okay.
but I think the higher level abstraction of my transition, I think it would be. So when I first got out, I had an L5S1 hernia that
Mm,
started to deteriorate like on the drive home to Indiana from Washington. And
mm,
so I had an intelligence contracting gig lined up in Great Lakes, which would have been perfect. and like 1 month before that was going to start, like I got out in June, drove home. This role was lined up for like August, and then in July I got the message that the contract got canceled. So then it went into search mode again, and so my wife was going to school up into the Chicago area, so that was kind of where I was centering my focus. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, like, I think the biggest problem I had up front was not not understanding what value proposition I brought to the table and being able to like verbalize it in a language that made sense to normal non-military speaking humans.
Yeah.
Um, and two, just not even understanding what businesses value to begin with so that they could pay me for the skills that I have. And
Yeah.
so a lot of my search was trying to figure out what I want, or trying to find something that I actually wanted to do. But that is like my wife especially would always remind me of like, well, you didn't pay your dues yet or something to that effect. And it's like, well, yeah, I get that, but, and then I start going down all the reasons why I think you know, I think the baseline start of my problem getting out of the military, I started a job working at Uline. The you know the first job I could find was warehouse floor, just packing the warehouse floor, and so that was cool. It was a job, whatever. I was like, all right, I can work my way up here. There's places to go in here. Then I start working, and I'm looking around at the frontline leaders, and I realize they're the same age as me. They have college degrees. All right, so I go to HR. I'm like, hey, can I be a frontline leader? What do I need to do that? Like, sorry, you got to have a college degree. I'm like, well, I've got 5 years of military. In fact, like 12 months ago, I was leading Iraqi troops in Arabic.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
without an interpreter on
How
operations.
about that?
So
What about
like,
that?
so does that qualify me for? No, it doesn't, because
No, it sure doesn't.
the HR doesn't care what you think. So that was my first like kind of wake up call of like, all right, the real world is not the same as the military world, so I have to adjust accordingly. Um, so I eventually got surgery for that through the Uline medical care, which that I'm very thankful for that, because I walked out of the surgery feeling fine and haven't had any problems with it
Wow.
since. But at the time, I did get a healthy addiction. Well, not healthy. I mean, a big addiction to Vicodin. So I was
Mm-hmm.
gobbling like 12 Vicodins a day to make it through work, or at least that was my justification.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually stopped that um, after leaving Uline, and started working as a contract, like a monthly contractor with the National Guard Special Forces unit that was out of Chicago. And then that got me into recruiting, and then I'd start going down the the very many steps that led me to where I'm at now. But I think going back to the higher level abstraction, that was my starting point, and that led me down a lot of the various pathways that I've went down. But I think kind of what you were talking about earlier, Kelly, the injustice
Mm-hmm.
piece, like rooting for the underdog, or actively fighting for the underdog. I think that's kind of been something that I've found myself being attracted to in a number of areas. But yeah, I think asking for help is definitely one of those things that is not common to us, or from like the special operations community.
Yeah.
And but we're always willing to help. It's like, but
Right.
at the same time, we're broken ourselves, and we're unwilling to admit that we're probably broken in a variety of ways. But we compensate it for it in different ways, and put on the mask like we always do, and just keep marching on. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I'm probably rambling at this point.
No, perfect lead in. Um, so now I'm guessing you have a different definition of strength.
Yeah, I think I always kind of being small statured. I think I always put more focus on going to like a Dungeons and Dragons setup. Hey, I didn't roll great. I rolled average on the body type, but I got a good roll on dexterity, so I
Yeah.
make up for it in finesse and wit. And so I think strength and not only understanding what you bring to the table, but how to amplify the dynamics of others that you're working with. I think one thing I didn't mention, and it kind of came up a little bit in different ways, and you kind of brought it up, but like a core thing that I built myself around as a young lad, young Blake. In high school, I started playing online role playing games. And so, like, I don't know if you know EverQuest. Before EverQuest, so you know World of Warcraft, right?
Uh huh.
Well, before World of Warcraft, there was EverQuest. That was like, it came out
Okay.
in '99. It was like the first 3D online role playing game, and it was massive. But before that, there was a game called Underlight that I played, and it was basically the same graphics as Doom. But the thing about that game was it was all player driven, and in order to learn a new skill, you had to go to another player that earned the rank of a teacher and ask them for a task to learn this new skill or to advance a new skill or to advance past a certain point. And they would create like a task and hand it to you, and you'd have to go accomplish this task and bring it back to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that game forced me to, because you can't progress in that game unless you act like an adult. Like you run around acting like a kid, they're like, "Go away, kid. We don't want you here. We're not gonna teach you a new skill because you're acting like a kid." So it forced me to like interact with adults in a mature way, and in a lot of way, I think that game, and then moving into EverQuest, it's the same thing, just on a larger scale. You're interacting with mature people to accomplish very mission specific tasks with a variety of unknown variables that you don't know what's going to happen, and you're dealing with other people that you don't know what's going to happen, and you're dealing with
Yeah.
internet connectivity issues, and you might just drop out, and the raid wipes because the healer's internet got shut off because whatever. So like I think looking back at my formative years, those sorts of video games were something that helped prepare me to have a better understanding of where strength can actually be found, and like what. Because when I was on the teams and going through the Q course, I think more than anything, my role in those types of environments was like morale, like just keeping the mood up. Because South Park and Chappelle's Show were
Mm-hmm.
big at the time, and you know, a properly timed South Park quote can take
Oh
the
yeah.
team's mood from just like this is absolute bullshit to yeah, this is
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like finding those moments, just like the jester and you know
Yeah.
prodding things along. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. I know that you haven't met Shiloh. Chase has, but that does remind me of my boyfriend. And so he was a first responder. He was former cop, military, or medically retired cop. Um, but anyway, that I'd like to go back and I'll play this for him because I think that's a huge, huge thing. So strength, now leveraging the people around you, the support that you have around you, and truly not trying to do it all on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think too.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of the hardest things for special operations, especially, is not it's not realizing that you can't do it alone, because a lot of things you can do alone. It's
Right.
realizing that it's less efficient that way, and you merely need to have the right conversation, and then that opens doors. And I don't think, for me, I think there's probably something to be said for guys that spend their entire career in the military and they reach high ranks and special operations, especially. And like the path that I went on, I did the special operations first, then I went the business path, and started figuring out what higher level interactions look like outside of the military. And so I think guys that spend their entire career and then get out, it's a different, they're so used to operating at higher levels in a military perspective that translating that to the business world requires a lot of iterations. You have to do a lot of iterations to sort of figure that out. But I think once you
That's
do,
a very nice way of saying that a lot of us have to fail really
yeah,
hard coming
yeah,
into the civilian world, Kelly. Whenever we first walk into a boardroom, because whenever like Blake, you're talking. I used to work in an S3 in an operations, shop that used to brief all levels of people every day, and my level of professionalism and excellence whenever I was in the military, I tried to take that into the civilian world, right? And whenever I tried to apply the same thing, I was told that I was aggressive, that I was curt, that I was abrasive, hard to work with,
Oh.
that I drove the line too hard. So I definitely think that there's a balance of what Blake is talking about. Failing, we're not used to failing. And I know Blake. I know you don't take failure well. I can hear that. You have a fear of failure. I think a lot of us do, especially given our personality types. Um, Failure to me is the same thing as still water, right? You're dead. You're not progressing. Um, but it's also where I learned the most. Blake, I have a on that vein. At what point did you feel like you were broken from your experiences,
hmm,
and that because you came together, as I understand it, with my partner Rob, which is a big shout out to DES. You guys
definitely.
met whenever he was working down at a college down in Dallas, right?
Yep.
And you guys got linked up, and y'all joined almost immediately with your former life that you did in the military. That you guys had a commonality, but then you guys also struck up this idea of this brand new that you guys were thinking this new course of therapy for your brothers and sisters that were having a hard time transitioning, or you know didn't know how to transition.
Yep.
How did that come apart? How did that come about?
So the core of the idea stemmed from me and my buddy Josh, who I met on Twitter. Who was a former Special Forces team sergeant. He left the teams to go be an Apache pilot.
Oh,
So,
cool.
but he was working on a Bitcoin project with
Okay.
a, a name that I don't know. I hesitate to say on here, just whatever.
Sure.
He was working with John McAfee. I might as well just cut because I'm planning on coming out and saying this stuff anyway at some point. Might as well do it now. So he was one of. All right, this might need to be edited. Well, this
Yeah.
That's okay.
so
Yep.
Say what you need to say. We'll go back into it
yeah.
again.
So
Yep.
Josh's situation, he worked with McAfee. McAfee fled the country. While McAfee was gone, Josh got wrapped up into the SDNY under an investigation as a state witness. When McAfee killed himself, uh, they're like, "Hey, dude, you're good. Don't worry about it." So I don't fucking believe a word the SDNY says. Fuck all of them. But I don't know if I don't want to say something that's going to put Josh in
Mm-hmm.
jeopardy because I we've had conversations, and he's more keyed up than I am. Like he's he's one of those, like, feels like the
I
legendary SF dudes that you bump into, and he's like even more keyed in, and his spider senses work much better than mine. And that dude is marked. He's got people watching him, so he knows that. I know that. I don't know what it means, but um, I
Mm.
I don't know. The reason I was going down this story is because,
It means you're a great problem
well,
solver, Blake.
yeah, well,
And people
he
like
and
to
I,
watch problem solvers.
yeah.
You know, that's all it is.
Well, he and I started playing World of Warcraft together, and
Yeah, of
we were
course you
doing
did.
raids. I was healing him. He was a warrior. It was fucking great, and we were on
Nice.
TeamSpeak, and we started to realize that it had a anxiety reducing feature, because we're doing the same sort of thing. Like, we're communicating in the same language. Move left, flank right. Like, all of these same sort of functions just flow out of us because we're doing what we're used to. And so that was something like, all right, well, we need to put together some sort of modality for video game therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then while I
Mm.
was at my former role, we had some work that we did on artificial intelligence. I guess this would have been 22. So this is much before all the AI started spinning up and getting more popular. And so learning what was possible started leading me down the path of, well, if you could recreate rooms, then you can recreate entire memories, and then redisplay them, and refine them and go through them step by step. And I was talking to a therapist buddy that I worked with here in Fort Wayne, and he's like, well, one of the modalities that we do is we have someone write out whatever traumatic memory is from start to finish. And then we go through line by line and, like,
Wow.
identify things that aren't objective. Like, this couldn't be true because you said this over here. And so it forces the patient to objectify this memory instead of it being just something subjective. And so once I knew that and I saw the mechanism and why it worked, then I'm like, all right, well, if you do this in an artificial environment, or an artificial intelligence agent, or some sort of structure that can convert text into three-dimensional objects in an environment, then you can do this. So I think the way I operate is looking for what's within the realm of the possible based on all known variables, and then if there's something way out there that's like, that sounds interesting, then I'll just start chasing after it, and I'll either I'll either get burnt or I'll figure something out and learn something along the way.
Yeah, MacGyver.
Yeah, yeah. My Guyver is always getting into scraps because he's curious. He's like, what's going on over
Yeah.
here?
Hey,
And
he's
then
open
Like,
to opportunity, right?
then he winds up in some storage room with a locked door and a Q-tip, and the cartel is gonna kill him. But yeah, I don't.
Oh,
yeah, fascinating story. It's full circle. Go ahead, Chase.
so you're sitting around with your buddy Joe. You play World of Warcraft. You said, I have to create a environment that allows us to de-escalate, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so you started kicking around this idea, this virtual environment, from what I'm understanding, and thus we you spawned ChronoScape, correct?
yeah.
So that's what we're here. This is ChronoScape podcast, right? ChronoScape. I'm going to take some liberties here, Blake, and
Feel
we
free.
can always go back and edit, right? So
Yeah.
what we're doing is you already kind of alluded to it. We are building a memory recreation, virtual reality exposure therapy that's going to bring you back to those moments and allow you, like you were talking about with your friend, be able to take those words, take that memory, dissect it, and objectify it. At what point did you realize that this was a lot more than you? When did you realize that this dream of being able to? Because I'm just going to take a stab here. You and I've had a lot of conversations, but I'm assuming you're trying to correct yourself, right?
Mm.
Like there's some point in there that you have identified that you are broken, that you're looking to you're looking to fix, right? Blake and I like to joke around a lot about being an island of misfit or broken toys is the crew that we've put together. When did you first realize you're a broken toy, Blake? And why did you choose this mode? I know you said you love video games, but why this? Why such a big environment?
Well, I think for myself, the broken toy. I think the easiest point would have been the whatchamacallit, the Vicodins with the herniated disc, and realizing just how easy it is for me to be like, I'll just drink more, or I'll just take another Vicodin, and so because it's an easy compensation angle, and so recognizing that, that definitely started me down that path of except there's a humility aspect underneath the need to be humble on the surface is inherent in the special operations community, but deep down ego is just all over the place, like 100%. But it's the ability to
say it ain't so, brother.
Like, there's something to be said for you can't really make it through a course like the Q course without having some ego. There has to be something that, like, I don't know. I'm just like picture in my head, like just punching like some vapor. Like if you punch vapor and there's nothing there, then it's nothing. But likewise, it can't punch you. So if there's no core ego at the center of that drive, there's not going to be enough fuel. And going back to our original conversation on 9/11, there's not going to be enough of a magic spell cast on the individual for them to, like, why am I doing this again?
Right.
Like, when that question starts hitting, the ego that's asking that question needs really good answers. And if you don't have really good answers, then you're just going to, I want some warm soup, please. And I don't want to go marching anymore. I'm done. Like, and that's what happens. But if that ego is there, then it's like, fuck that. I'm not quitting. That dude's weak. He'll quit before I do.
100%.
So I think to answer the question, realizing that I have an ego is me recognizing the brokenness. Like I need to get rid of the ego and just stripping away as often as I can when I recognize it, and not and I think also being more engaged with the people around me so that they're able to, and I'm kind of bouncing around, but I think one thing that I've noticed in myself that's like the core gap that I still don't know how to solve it, and I've talked with other guys and it's the same way. I cannot perceive how other people perceive me. Like I can perceive other people, I feel very well. Like it feels like I can read minds at times, but trying to understand how other people see me just doesn't compute. And I don't know why. I don't know what it means, but it's something that I've identified. So having a clear picture of how other people see me gives me a better understanding of like who I actually am as opposed to who I think I actually am. And so another problem in the special operations community is we're very comfortable being alone for the most part. Like, and more often than not, we're probably annoyed by a lot of the people around us because they're worried about nonsensical bullshit that really doesn't matter. And so, but then that gets into the whole ego thing, because it's like, well, what does it matter? Why do I care? Yep.
That's your experience. I do not blame you on that. My goodness.
So
I remember coming back from my first deployment, Blake.
Yeah.
And and nothing really. Everything had lost its luster. All the problems, right? Like the house is on fire, and you're sitting back going, dude, that's not even
Put it
smoking
out.
yet. Like, what are we doing? Like,
Right.
like
I can understand that.
the urgency.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking for you. I'm just speaking for me. Like the urgency kind of left my body. You talk about what was the cost, Kelly? You asked that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to internally reflect. I think urgency
Hmm. Hmm.
kind of
Makes sense.
took a big nosedive. I kind of look at everything through a different, not rose-colored lenses, but more of like a BS
We're not.
filter.
There's not bits of metal zipping at me at high rates of speed right now.
Right.
That lens. That's usually
I
the
mean,
lens that.
yeah, Blake, I didn't have the experience you had. You and I've talked about this a lot. I was the private, that went into the Marine Corps, that started off as that little guy, and I did this a lot. Out behind a lot of
Mm-hmm.
big containers.
Yep.
You literally took poo poo and went and burned it, and somebody had to stir it while it burnt, so it kept burning. That was me. I did that job. I would do anything not to do there, not to be there again.
Yeah.
It definitely keeps you humble, brother.
Yeah.
Whenever you are, realizing where you come from,
Wow.
and you talk about, having some, traumatic memories. They mean different to different people,
Yeah.
right?
And for different reasons. Yeah.
And for different reasons. I know for me, I have dealt with PTSD myself. Blake, I know you have as well. Kelly, I'm assuming you've had many touches of that as we have talked. It's different for everybody. The flavor is different for everybody, right? Mine personally is survivor's guilt. I went with people and came back where I didn't have family, I didn't have things that were tangible, and then that's the part that bothers me, even to this day. Um, that keeps me up at night, right? So you talk about what makes you tick. You talked about what brought you, to
Hmm.
ChronoScape, wanting to create the game, right? You're talking about the need, for to pull yourself out or identify your brokenness. Um, can you walk me through where you knew you had something special here? And that's whenever I know I can speak for myself. When I knew we had something special here, but for you, what makes Chronoscape something worth doing? What brings the efficacy? Why are we building this? Why did you decide, hey, I'm here? And then what was the aha moment where you're like, oh shit, we're really doing this?
Hmm. So I really think the first moment, the first inkling that there was something here was probably around one of the first conversations I had with Robert at the start of last year when we first reconnected. It was like he said something to the effect of everyone that I talk to about this becomes very interested and very excited. And I've never experienced that. I've had ideas where some people are like, yeah, that sounds interesting, but then it's like I don't understand what that means. So I've never been in that spot where it's like literally everyone that this topic gets brought up to is motivated to either get involved or find out more about it.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing that that was probably point A, and then point B would have been somewhere along the. We were having a conversation about. I don't know, it was one of our team meetings, and we were talking about the target demographics, and I said something to the effect of our target demographic is essentially any sentient being over the age of 5, because pretty much everybody has experienced trauma at some point in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I just kind of said that out loud, it started gathering momentum around that and really thinking through all of the trauma. One of the ones specifically that hit me recently was like it's kind of like a vision. I don't know if I hesitate to call it that out loud in public, but we'll just say it that for now.
Yeah.
But like being dropped in the perspective of the average frontline peasant in 1300 whatever, kingdom warfare, just being smashed into the earth by a horse. Like, just millions of humans have experienced that throughout their life, but like what does it amount to? What was the purpose? All that
Right.
sort of stuff. But the people that experience that on the periphery, or just see things terrible on the periphery, what does that impact have with them, and in the second and third order effects of all of that? And so I think before I ever got into ChronoScape, kind of a concept that I developed with Donovan, our one of the psychologist that I mentioned earlier, who's been an advisor for the project since the start. Working with him on a wilderness element thing. Basically, take kids from his practice that have behavioral issues, and we go out in the woods, and I'd be like a field guide, and he'd be the psychology guide, and we'd bounce off of each other, and it was great. It worked out really well, and the kids get a lot out of it, and I got a lot out of it. But one of the things
Bushcraft
that I kind
therapy.
of got, what's that?
Bushcraft therapy.
Yeah, no, it's effective. It's real. Something
Yeah.
about
Love it.
smelling burning wood. Yeah. But like this concept of the trauma being some sort of a psychic splinter that gets embedded into you, and if you don't properly remove it, it gets infected and it causes other problems that you can't, unless you sit down and work through it. You're not able to trace how it got to where it is, but finding what that original splinter was, really understanding it, you can objectify it, turn it into something solid, and remove it. And
What a gift.
then the infection goes away, because it's not some subjective demon that every time it just enters into the shadowy corner of your mind, you sense it and you're like, oh God, I don't even want to think about that, so I'm just going to go over here and do X, Y, and Z. And usually those X, Y, and Z's are also destructive. So especially the special operations community, because that's the common theme in our world. So turning the
No, you mean high performers and all that. Your 1% of your 1%, adrenaline addicted, some of the most caffeine and addictive personalities. You
yeah
mean to tell me that they have a hard time with substance abuse? No way. No
yeah
way.
yeah.
No
Right.
correlation. No.
Right.
I think all that funnels back to the same ego sort of question. It's just
Mm.
the ego has to have fuel to get through the hard times. Otherwise, start asking very difficult questions. And
Mhm.
but I think once you slow down long enough to actually ask those questions and truly answer them, you're not able to start healing from it.
Yeah.
So this is a break away from what you consider to be traditional talk therapy, right?
I think I would say it's more of the logical conclusion given the technological capabilities. It's
Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting.
because I
Walk
because
me
I
through that. Expand on that just a little bit more.
yeah
So you do we as far as I understand, you there is elements of talk therapy that are still in here. Freudian talk therapy, right?
yeah.
So walk me through how that process works as we're
So going back to that concept of writing out a memory from start to finish,
Mhm.
the only thing that's really being replaced is that ability, or the fidelity of that journal. Because writing a memory out, it's there, but it's not easily translated by yourself over time necessarily, or especially someone else. So if you're able to enhance that mechanism, but still maintain the human element from the outside, offering that third person perspective, Like it's not it's definitely not removing the therapeutic function of, or the therapeutic function of the therapist themselves. It's putting a more powerful tool in their hands to help draw more out. Because I think obviously we're not there yet on the visual representation of the memory, but the more I've like gone through these memories myself, just from the verbal extraction of it, the more I start to play through exact like where was that thing in the memory, and I can't necessarily place it. I can only have fuzzy memories of it. So I'm the running hypothesis is the moment we're actually able to have someone with a headset on in the environment actually manipulating objects in space, there's something different is going to happen that hasn't happened before. And I do believe that, just based on it, how everything has gone so far. Trying to getting people to just recall their living rooms, myself included, like trying to think of my living room, what it looked like from my childhood. Like
Yeah.
you're firing neurons that haven't fired before in current, t equals 0, as opposed to t equals negative, 20, 30 years. So you're doing different things in your brain that haven't been done, and just that alone causes other things to happen that I don't think we can anticipate.
So I love that answer, Blake, and I'm going to mark this. I want to approach that in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. What? Why do you? Why do you feel like? Why do you feel like the mode of virtual reality was the best mode to go through for this healing process, for removing that psychic splinter, if you will?
I think because for me, I operate very visually. Like I can see things in space clearly, and I think it's why I was good. And I mentioned I wasn't a good engineer from a supply standpoint, but I was really good at demo. Like I could visualize explosions really well, and understand how they expand and how they would move. And so like I can see things in my head very clearly, and my sense is that if I can translate that into a space with very high fidelity, so like what is in my head is in this space that I'm in, there will be I can basically turn off the mental processing of my brain and focus on what I'm actually seeing again, as
Yeah.
opposed to thinking through like, is this actually like replaying it in my head. And I think there's also, and as I'm saying it now, I hadn't really thought about this before, but the whole purpose of journaling a lot of times is just dumping your thoughts out from your head. So there's an anxiety reduction that comes from knowing that these thoughts that were in my head that I thought were important for whatever reason are now on paper, and I don't have to worry about forgetting it or losing the accuracy of it. And so I think too, it's another one of those things like there's probably something to be said from a confession standpoint too, because
Do you
it's
know? You remember being even as an adult. I'm going to say this as a kid because it sounds a lot softer when I say it this way. You remember as a kid whenever you got told a secret by somebody, right? And man, it made you feel so good having that secret, right? Until you had to be around your other friends,
yeah.
right? And you were really good at keeping that secret, right? And you might still be good at keeping that secret. But you hold on to that secret for so long that none of your other friends understand the value of that secret,
Yeah.
right? So what happens, what do we know that happens whenever people keep secrets, especially big secrets, from their family and loved ones, right? one of the best. Every time that we talk about this, Blake, I keep on coming up. Especially as I'm looking at your background, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? Being able to bring family and be able to create this memory, right, along with somebody, a trusted, somebody who has your best interest at heart, and then being able to call out, and taking that air of mystery, taking the secrets away, going to confession, stripping away the secrets, being being open and honest, naked in
Yep.
front of somebody else with your
Yep.
most vulnerable spots. I know is very difficult.
Hmm.
I know that you do such a great job of whenever we talk about painting a picture for us. For some of us who are not so good with their words, how do you see you've created this system? How does that work? So if I'm not as eloquent, right, with my words as, say, a Miss Kelly Winkler or a Mr. Blake Miles, let's just say that I'm short. I'm military minded. I'm short. Short sentences, least amount of words to get my point across, kind of person. How do I interact with this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the key things that we've figured out in developing ChronoScape is what I don't think many people have figured out yet, but I believe we have, is this hard part of extracting a memory completely from someone so that there's no gaps. And kind of what we came up with was a way. We have one agent that is, her sole focus is to, and I say her, our agents have names, and Adam and Eve happen to be the two agents that are interacting with the user to create these environments. But Eve is the interviewer specifically, and the method that she uses essentially determines the size of what the box is. Figure out the size of the box and figure out everything inside the box up to a degree of confidence. And so the more questions that get asked, the more answers that come out, the more threads are identified, and as each question gets answered, each thread gets tied, and then Eve reaches a confidence level like, yeah, I've got the full understanding of this based on, the user doesn't have any remaining threads that I haven't pulled on. And so it really doesn't, the only thing that changes is the amount of time and the amount of responses that need to be given, because the more dense your answers are with context of the memory itself, the quicker the process goes. And so I think,
so if I give one word answers like yes,
you might be there.
no.
You might be there for about an hour, just explaining verbally. But I do think, to that point, though, I think where we're heading is not only to be able to verbally interact with the environment and change things through the spoken word, but also being able to tactily. I don't know I can't tactily.
Tactfully, yeah.
Well, it's tactile, but fully of tactile. So whatever, with your hands, use your hands to.
I think you said it.
Yeah.
Being able to manipulate your environment.
Yeah. Being able to use your hands to manipulate, stretch, drag, pinch, pull, drop. All the standard things that you can do with the touch screen, you can do with your hands inside a virtual space. And
articulate.
What's that?
The word you were looking for? Articulate? Was that the word you were looking for?
Manipulate. I guess manipulate would probably be something. I love etymology. There's some great word somewhere in some language that's perfect for this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think once someone is able to do that in space and see the results of it live, and have not an agent like over their shoulder talking with them about it, and therapists either physically there or operating remotely and observing the process themselves, like there's going to be things that come out of this process that not only can we not anticipate because it's an unknown environment, but we're already seeing things that I can't really explain myself, just in how artificial intelligence operates when you're pushing it into areas that it knows it doesn't have experience in, and it knows you don't have experience in, but you both have this. We're like, whatever, we'll just do it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, super
That's
exciting. I can't wait to play with it.
Me too. Just gotta get there.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like the process that we're developing here is going to be one that is going to help people extrapolate and then objectify, correct? So that's what we're talking about is empowering or harnessing uh, this AI robust system that is ever emerging, and being able to manipulate that environment to best suit and start healing those psychic, those splinters. I
Yeah.
want to say psychic splinters, but they really are.
Yeah.
They're mental splinters that do need to be, pulled and dressed, and taken care of.
And as you're
Or else you
talking,
become septic, right?
what's that? Yeah. No, yeah. That's the danger.
You
Yeah.
feel-
Once, and that, a psychic septic infection, like that's suicide. That's what that is. Because it's basically the recognition that, or the acceptance that this, this splinter or these collections of splinters is so bad and it's so pervasive, it's never going to leave, and the easiest way out is just to end it, regardless of the impact of other people. And that's I think that's the end state. And so if we can get that, I think there's a resilience in not only recognizing how other people attain those psychic splinters, but also the individual themselves working through it and knowing that there's a viable release valve that isn't just locking it away and compartmentalizing it and putting the demon in his proper box until he has to come out, or he just comes out on his own, because that's what they do. And it's it's putting another weapon in the hand. And as we mentioned it earlier, the confession, like I don't want to confession is something entirely different, but I believe this is a sort of middle layer. This is a sort of agnostic confessional that functions in the same way for the same reasons. But if the person isn't connecting it to God, that's their own choice. But the outcomes, I believe, will be similar. Though, again, I'm not trying to take anything from actual confession, because that's an entirely different ballgame.
Yeah. This has such hope. It gives such hope. And I'm not someone, I wouldn't call myself, I don't have PTSD at all. Like I just wouldn't categorize myself as that. But I am an empath. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So, I feel such massive amounts of hope for these people and those beyond it that we don't even know will be, like indirectly affected.
Yep.
Massive amounts of hope. And that is why, like, I don't know who said it, Chase or Blake, but no, it was you, Blake. How many people have gotten behind this and have been excited about it?
Yeah.
To me, that's why.
Yeah.
Because I can feel the momentum and the energy behind it, but most of all, the hope.
Yeah.
With a capital P. Like, so exciting. So exciting.
Yeah.
Even if just a little bit of progress is made, even.
Yeah, I think you're
so
right.
excited for this. And thank you for your vulnerability and sharing some of those hard things and your self-awareness and the definitions, the hard questions that have been asked.
Thank you for
Thank
the great
you
questions.
so much.
You pull all that out of me. So
Well,
Good.
I love the hope message as well.
Yeah.
It's solvable.
Yep.
You know,
Hmm.
coming from people who have a background in solving problems, it's solvable.
Mhm.
It's not. It's not. I know this is not. We came here to talk about technology, and you know, this space is about what's coming up next. But this
Mhm.
technology is more. You know, it's beyond us.
It is.
We
Here,
believe that we are building it in order to remove that loneliness or remove that. Mm,
it's a barrier to entry. It's
Mm.
because there's a lot of people who, especially in the special operations communities, like talk therapy is only going to go so far, especially if they don't have a trust that that person can even
Yeah.
comprehend what they're saying.
Yeah.
So this is like a middle layer where,
or admitting to another human that you're hurting and
yeah,
that you can't handle your load.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and then how everybody else around you, as we've been taught, Blake, I can say this as a young man, you know, growing up in the Hearst household, we were taught to be men. I didn't have sisters. We were taught to be men, and men handled their stuff, right? Like, you know, period end. You know, I
Yeah.
was told at a young age, you know, rub some dirt on it, dry your tears. We don't cry, right? You got to figure it out, keep going. Um, I think this is one of those tools, much like I use you know, whenever I was younger, I use this great analogy here. When I was younger, I used to, you know, walk around with hand tools, you know, around my house whenever I repaired things. As I've gotten older, I put a lot more new and better tools in the toolbox,
yeah,
where something used to take me, you know, 2 hours to repair something around my house. Now it takes me about 15 to 20 minutes. It's because I've grown. Number one, I've grown wiser. I've had repetition, and then two, I have better tools. I feel like we here on this ChronoScape team are here to bring better tools for the toolbox. This is not new technology. This is not a new way of. This is not a. We're healing old wounds in a new way, using the resources that are already available, but we're bringing it to 2026 and merging
Mhm.
it with new technologies and allowing the therapy, you know, the course of therapy that we're offering to provide for people, I think is the biggest key to success. And our team. I know this is probably way off topic. It probably is not going to make the podcast, but I love our team. We have a team of veterans or very closely touching, you know, Leo, and have a very big heart for these things and understand that this affects one out of every seven Americans are affected by
Mhm.
some type of PTSD and some
Mhm.
type of psychic splinter that holds them back.
Mhm.
Love to be the vehicle, love to be the tweezers, would love just to be the tool or the mechanism
yeah,
that allows that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. These are real people, real nervous systems. Um, but there's just so many. There's so
yeah.
many of them. 1 in 7? Are you serious? Like, my God.
That's the that is the national average right now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Is one of out of every seven Americans claim to have some type of traumatic PTSD qualifying symptom. Now that's self proclamation, right? That's not, they don't meet the diagnostic model per se, but that doesn't mean just because you don't meet a socially, you know, a social impairment, because that's what it means for you to, you know, to move past that marker. Just because you don't have a social impairment now doesn't mean it doesn't fester. We talk
Yeah.
about that being a splinter. You know, a small
Yeah.
splinter can create big problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, so keeping you off that index is just as important as getting people off that index.
And one thing too, kind of probably good to finish on, since I know we're close to time, is the ability to pull out that. Oh man, I lost it again. Ah,
Mm.
I
it
hate
was
that.
like right on.
I hate
It was right on the surface, and I lost it.
I
Um,
hate that so much. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Well, we'll have to cut
Well,
So what's
that one out.
next? Tell our audience what's next, Blake. What's next? So right now we're taking funding, right? I mean, we came out here to bring awareness to ChronoScape and bring awareness to the project, right? What's next? What's up on the chopping block?
So right now, we are deep into development, converting the produced memories in our format that we created into a 3D generated environment. Um, that process is we're right on the edge of having the 3D generated environment, and then just iterating through cleaning it up. So it's instead of having to refine it on the back end, it's as close to accurate as possible, just one shot. So that's our current objective. And in the meantime, our intent is to make Eve, our interviewer, available to beta testers in the near future. So memories can start being extracted now in advance of our 3D environment generation being ready. So once the 3D generation is ready and live, then the users can upload their memories and take a look. If they have a 3D, we're going to figure out how to exactly what program they'll be using, but at a minimum, they'll have the ability to look at the environments and see what they look like, and then it's just a matter of putting in the people moving around, because that's going to be a property in it. But yeah, there's a lot of development ahead. The financial aspect of it, there's obviously a cost to everything, and this is not without those costs. So yeah, if the ChronoScape is something that you're interested in getting involved in, and you believe you have the capital on hand to support what we're working on, we would love to talk to you.
So what you're saying is you don't have a large financial backer
No,
that is pushing this forward. Is that what you're saying?
we do not have an institution, some magical, I don't even know what to call it. There seems to be no shortage of organizations that have billions of dollars in their coffers, contributing to all manner of problems in society. But yeah, we do not have anything like that. So
Well, I think that's purposeful, right? We want to keep this pure. I think
yeah.
this is for we're here for the healing aspect, not for the ROI. Even though,
Yeah.
man, I'm telling you, I'm still human at the end of the day. That'd be nice.
Yep. Yep.
Kelly, let's make sure we cut that part, or leave it at B-roll.
Well, sure.
But I feel like with working with you, Blake, and working on ChronoScape, bringing a solution that is not at its foremost or on its tip a money-making measure. You're doing this out of pure intent. It is for the betterment of of your brothers and sisters. I know it started off whenever we first started talking about it. It was veterans, right? Because that's our people, and we've expanded that scope, like you said earlier. If you're 5 years old, or older, and we're talking about from 6 years old all the way to now World War II veterans, being able to capture their memories. Oh man,
Yeah.
being able to capture.
I remembered what I was going to say.
Vietnam.
I remembered what I was going to say.
Yes.
The lessons that come from like memories that are created in ChronoScape that are shared with the younger generations. Though I think the lessons in there and the structure of teaching those lessons through like a visual representation of memory, I think that's something that we don't quite know how it's going to work, but I can anticipate there's something very powerful in that process. In the same way, like spoken history and memorized history, goes through the ages. That being able to reconstruct that sort of thing, I believe, will be very powerful, and specifically for the martial class among us, those of us that like to think in war and what does war look like. being able to see like through the eyes of a Vietnam veteran or World War II, Korea War vet, like that would have been tremendous for me, like as a younger kid.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And so, and I think that's
I think it definitely would have shaped some of my decision making skills, even at that young.
Yeah.
Wow, this isn't like MASH. Like, we're not gonna make gin. We're not gonna make hooch in our tent, and
we might
make jugs.
No guarantees.
Can't make it in the tent.
I learned about I learned about Tuborg beer, a Belgian beer, while in Iraq. That was what our Iraqis could gather for us. So
wow.
It used to cost us 2 cases of MREs for a bottle of Jack, or for a fifth of Jack. Whenever we were there.
Wow.
If that helps with currency rates.
Yeah. That was about right.
I haven't experienced that, so I'm just like taking it in, like, oh my God.
Thank God you haven't, Kelly. We're talking about prison.
Okay. I thank you guys. Thank you for literally stirring crap and doing the hardest shit. Thank you for your service.
You are not welcome for that part, but you're welcome for the other parts.
Yeah.
I think in future episodes, I think there's probably a topic of the moral injury perspective.
Moral injury.
Specifically the 9/11, because I can say without question, me figuring out Epstein's name in 2016 and all of the second and third order effects of what that meant shattered like everything in my world.
Wow.
Shattered my reality.
Yeah,
mine was
2 months.
2014 whenever we started pulling out, out of the soft pull out of the Middle East, and I watched the people that I spent my adult life fighting against, picking up and using the same weapon systems that my leadership decided that it wasn't worth bringing back or destroying.
Yep.
I'm with you, Blake. It was another. I had an aha moment, but my reality got broken in another way.
Well, and it's the end result is the same, because it's a recognition that the things that you did and the lives impacted, the deaths, the destruction, it was based on lies, and now you can't. You have to have like some special permission now to say it's a lie in public, or there's blow, and it's always been that way, I guess. But I don't know. I think the moral injury concept. It's like a layer of abstraction that you can't see until you deal with your own internal traumas that you went through, and then once you pull back from that, then you can start to see some of the higher level stuff. And I think that was, I had time to deal with the Epstein outcome, second, third order effects, but I think people in the future are not going to be afforded that slow titration. I think at some point there's going to be a dump of information that people are going to either look at and break their brains and their psyches for a time, or they're just going to refuse to look at it and be lost.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I feel like we need a big old follow-up conversation now.
Yeah.
Because I'm curious. I'm the reporter, right? Like,
I completely forgot about that. That's why you're perfect for this role. That's why you're asking such great questions. I didn't even think about it.
Oh, well, that I think is more innate from my empathness, but yeah, because Barbara Walters with 2020 was specifically my whole goal. That was my goal. And in the 90s, we had the giant camcorder. I did play Sonic the Hedgehog, guys. Nice. I had a Sega Genesis.
Oh, yeah.
But my thing was mainly this big old camcorder and I interviewed my friends.
That's awesome.
Monica Lewinsky, I had one of my friends play her mom, and I interviewed her and like, let's talk about this, and like, let's go back into the shit. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think I played a similar game, but it wasn't the same way that you did. Sorry.
No, that's
sorry,
okay. Okay, so we're at 104. Are you guys ready for me to give an outro, and then we'll?
Yeah.
Well,
I gotta get running to
Okay.
pick up a kid.
And then what I'll do is press stop, and I'll just hold it there for a second, Chase, until I have got to go to the bathroom so bad for the last hour. And then I'll call you and ask what to do with the recording after that. But all right, so thank you again, Blake, so much. Amazing conversation. Thank you, Chase. Stories like this remind us that resilience isn't the absence of struggle. Everyone has it. It's the courage to face it and evolve through it. I think you did that, both of you, and it is so amazing to see. Very much a privilege to be interacting with you guys on this conversation. I do not feel worthy. If this conversation resonated with any of you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Healing is possible. There's a lot of hope here. This is the ChronoScape podcast, where we're exploring the future of trauma recovery for those who serve. I'm Kelly Winkler. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
That was perfect, Kelly.
That was.
Way to go.
Yay!
Awesome.
Yay!
Way to go.
Okay.
I'm looking forward.
Excited.
I'm looking forward to more of these.
Yeah,
Yes.
so fun. Oh my God. Yes.
Yes.
All
So,
right.
what I want you to do with Riverside is I would
Mm-hmm.
like for each Kelly, you're the host, so you're going to have to stand by. Blake, whenever you
Okay.
hit end, do not close whatever window is open
Okay.
until it tells you it will finish uploading, and then it will tell you when you can close that out. If you close it out
Wow.
before she'll miss the last however long.
Wow.
Other than that, I'll talk to y'all later.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
So,
See ya.
Chase, can I call you then
Call me. Yeah.
to
All the time.
like because I don't want to close this out not properly. So
Yeah.
I go ahead and I'll stop the recording now.
Yep. Stop the recording now.
I can-
Okay.
All right.
Okay.